Welcome to Does It Matter by Brainy Ballers, where we dissect the game with cutting-edge analytics to give you the upper hand. We analyze everything from hand sizes to average depth of targets to uncover hidden trends that no one else sees. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven domination. Because here at Brainy Ballers, we don't just watch the game, we understand it. So get ready, it's podcast time.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really cutting through the noise on a big question. It's one that pops up constantly in scouting reports, fantasy drafts, you name it. Does a wide receiver's agility score, those combine numbers, actually predict future success in the NFL? Especially for your fantasy team.
That's exactly it. Yeah, for this deep dive, we've got some pretty solid source material. It's a rigorous statistical look, really. We're exploring the correlation, the actual importance, and maybe even finding some ideal benchmarks for this agility metric.
Benchmarks, okay.
And we're focusing on the top 50 fantasy football finishers, PPR scoring, going way back to 2003. The whole goal is to figure out if this number everyone talks about, well, really matters for understanding how players will perform.
And I get the feeling the findings might shake things up a bit, maybe challenge what we think we know.
Definitely counterintuitive in some ways.
Because for years you hear coaches, scouts, everyone raving about quick twitch, a receiver's ability to just stop and start on a dime. It feels so basic to the position. For anyone less familiar, what exactly is an agility score measuring? And why do you think these initial trends you looked at were so kind of fuzzy?
That's a great question. So these agility scores, they usually come from drills like the three-cone or the short shuttle at the NFL Combine. They're designed to measure essentially how quickly a player can change direction without losing speed.
Makes sense. You'd think that's crucial for getting open.
Exactly. Intuitively, you'd absolutely think that translates directly to shaking defenders, making those sharp cuts we see on Sundays. But when we first looked at those top fantasy guys since '03, using that PPR data, well, it was almost a statistical toss-up.
A toss-up, really?
Yeah. We found that the top 5 fantasy finishers only had better agility scores than the guys ranked 31st to 50th, about 56.2% of the time.
Wow, 56%. That's barely better than a coin flip.
Precisely. It really makes you kind of scratch your head, doesn't it? Are we measuring the right thing? Or maybe what we're measuring just isn't as predictive as everyone assumed.
Okay, so beyond that initial, coin flip observation, after digging deeper into all the stats, what's the final word? What's the ultimate takeaway for us trying to make smarter decisions?
Well, it's interesting. Despite that initial blurriness, the research did seem to find a sweet spot, an optimal agility score threshold.
Do you want to start dominating your drafts? At BrainyBallers.com, we've researched every metric under the sun for you to find which ones are best linked to fantasy points. You can access hundreds of metrics to sharpen your scouting abilities so you know which metrics matter and which are just noise. Stop guessing on which thresholds to look for within each metric. Big numbers can be misleading or irrelevant. Our Ultimate Athlete Blueprints reveal essential scouting metrics, their importance, and benchmarks within each metric that help predict a player's probability of being a success or bust. Elevate your scouting ability with Brainy Ballers' Ultimate Athlete Blueprints today. Click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
Came out at 10.1 and above.
10.1, okay.
And players in that range, they actually showed a 16.2% bump in top 10 fantasy appearances compared to the guys in the bottom 10 for agility.
Okay. 16% isn't nothing, I guess.
But here's the kicker. This is where the really rigorous statistical analysis comes in. We looked at the Pearson correlation value.
The stats stuff. Okay.
And it came back at, wait for it, 0.018.
0.018. Wow. Okay, for those of us maybe not living in spreadsheets, what does that number actually mean?
Well, it's basically telling us there's no meaningful link. To give you some context, you'd hope for a Pearson value of at least 0.1 to show even a weak positive correlation.
Just 0.1, and this was 0.018.
Exactly. 0.018 indicates effectively no strong correlation between a receiver's combine agility score and how well they produce fantasy points down the road. It's pretty significant because it really flies in the face of common wisdom. And what's more, the analysis even suggested that this optimal 10.1 range, its significance seems to be slightly declining over the last decade.
Huh. So it's getting even less relevant over time.
That seems to be the trend, yeah. further reinforcing that it might have had very little predictive power to begin with, and maybe even less now.
That's genuinely a bombshell, especially if you build fantasy rosters or just, watch the draft analysis. So if a metric that feels so core to being a good receiver turns out to be statistically, well, almost irrelevant, does the analysis hint at what does matter more, or are we just left thinking agility scores aren't the magic bullet?
That really is the critical question, isn't it? It's a perfect example of how data can sometimes just flip what you believe on its head. Now, these sources specifically zeroed in on debunking the agility score's predictive power. So the clear takeaway is that those specific combine drills, while maybe interesting indicators of pure athleticism, they just aren't reliable predictors for long-term fantasy production, not on their own.
Right.
It kind of forces us to look beyond just single athletic numbers, maybe consider more complex metrics or, things like game film, coaching fit, opportunity stuff that's harder to just boil down to one number.
Harder to quantify, yeah.
It's really about letting the data guide us, even when it tells us something that feels wrong initially.
It definitely makes you rethink watching those pre-draft highlight reels, focusing purely on how quick a guy looks running around cones, doesn't it?
Totally.
Maybe we've all been a bit too caught up in how players look in shorts, rather than their actual on-field production when it counts. It's like finding out your lucky game day socks have zero statistical impact.
Exactly. A tough pill to swallow sometimes.
And that brings us to a really fascinating question for you, the listener, to think about. Given that something seemingly so intuitive, like a wide receiver's agility score, holds almost no predictive power according to this NFL data, what else is out there? What other widely accepted ideas or assumptions in your own areas of interest? Maybe it's business, investing, your health routines, even just your favorite sports team's long-held beliefs might actually crumble under some rigorous, data-driven scrutiny. Are you holding on to some common wisdom that might not actually hold water? Something definitely worth diving into. Until next time on The Deep Dive.